So, St Mary of the Cross Parish, Mordialloc and Aspendale Justice Action Group welcomes you all this evening, and we currently have 47 on screens online, and I imagine that's probably more people because on some screens there may be more than one person watching. And this is all across Australia because we have offered it out to the Earthcare parishes across Australia. And so I think perhaps from Queensland and New South Wales. Our JAG Charter includes in our mission statement working on issues of understanding and respect for First Nation people. I was so lucky recently to hear our guest speaker this evening, Sherry Balcombe, the manager of our Aboriginal Catholic Ministry, speak at the International Ignatian Eco-Spirituality Conference. Similarly, this evening, Sherry is going to speak on Aboriginal spirituality and much more, including maybe the referendum on First Nations voice enshrined in our Constitution. There's been, obviously, with our election, lots of changes just recently. Our group is so pleased to be sharing this so widely, and so together we welcome you, Sherry, into our hearts this evening.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start off with an acknowledgement to country. I'm honoured to be welcomed to speak tonight with all of you, and I'd like to thank you for taking the time to hear me and maybe just learn a little bit about our story and a small bit about our wonderful culture. I'd like to acknowledge that we live, work and conduct our business on the sacred lands of the First Peoples. We especially recognise that this land is as sacred today as it has been since time immemorial. I'd like to pay our respects to the traditional custodians and thank them for caring for this land for thousands of years so that we might enjoy its benefits today. As we gather on this sacred land, let us acknowledge that we are standing on country for which the members and elders of the local Aboriginal community and their ancestors have been custodians for thousands and thousands of years, on which we've performed age-old ceremonies, celebrations, initiations and renewals. We acknowledge their living culture and the unique role in the life of this country. The Creator chose Aboriginal people to take care of this land, and our law was to sustain and nurture all that had been created. My ancestors have danced and sung the creation stories, proclaiming the sacredness of the gifts given to us by the Creator Spirit since the beginning of time. We have lived in this great south land of the Holy Spirit since there was a land bridge between Tasmania and the mainland, and our people walked that bridge. We've survived through ice ages. We survived megafauna. They hunted us and we hunted them with spears and stone axes. We have survived and we are still here today. We are the oldest, longest, continuous culture in the world, something for us all to be very proud of. We are born the spirit of this country. It is where we're conceived, it's our home, and it's where we belong. We have a totemic relationship with the birds and the animals, which connects us to both the physical world and the spiritual world. And that is underpinned by a reciprocal obligation to care for each other and the natural environment. It is a birthright that has been handed down through our bloodlines from generation to generation. Our relationship with the land is at the centre of our lives. Our country is our mother. In a sense, our country is us. And as caretakers of the land and all that has been created, my people have used fire as a way of rejuvenating the country, of bringing new life for the animals, and the inheritance of rich, fertile soil for future generations. As a Queensland, Ocala and Jabbergai woman, and on your behalf, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land. We acknowledge all elders here tonight and all of my Aboriginal elders, my brothers and sisters, past and present, and our youth as they hold our dreams for the future. And now I'd just like to share my screen. Share. And. Oh, I don't know, will it go? Yes. And so as you take your next step, remember the Kulin Nations of people who first walked this land. And the Kulin Nations are the people from Victoria. Now, welcome to country. I just did an acknowledgement, and so I'm kind of seeing tonight as a conversation and a sharing of what I know. I'm not an expert, so please don't judge me as one. I'm just sharing the knowledge that I've learned over the 19 years that I've been working at the Aboriginal Catholic Ministry. Now, a welcome to country can only be done by a person that when they're doing a welcome to country, they must be on the country that they belong on. I'm on Wurundjeri land at the moment in the Kulin Nations, but my spirit and my people are from far north Queensland in Cape York. And so that's my spiritual home. Even though I was born here, I will never belong here. And when I die, that's when my spirit will return to far north Queensland. So my people have existed here in Australia thousands of years before Abraham. In all that time, God was working with my people. He worked through our culture. He was saving us despite our human weaknesses. He was preparing us for the day when we would see the features of Aborigines in the image of his son. And this was by a little prayer written by Deacon Boniface from Wadeye. May he rest in peace. An incredible man, our first Aboriginal deacon in Australia, who met the Holy Father when he came to Australia in Alice Springs in 1986. How do I go back? There we go. I was just trying to move my screen out the way. I really don't need to see me. And when the Holy Father came to Australia in 1986, there was a big resurgence of the church recognising Aboriginal people. And he gave an absolutely incredible speech that is still as relevant today as it was back then. And if you ever get an opportunity to read it, please do. It's widely available on the internet. And this was the birth of the Aboriginal Catholic Ministry in Thornbury. This is where our founders, Auntie Joyce Smith, she went up and she seen the Holy Father and she came back and she said, he said it, so it has to happen. This has to happen. And I think this really encapsulates what grabbed the Aboriginal people to move to action. Until Aboriginal people and their contribution has been joyfully accepted, the church in Australia will not be the church that Jesus wants it to be. Now, we can give our contribution as much as we want, but until it's joyfully received. So I think that's the message to the church in Australia, that you need to joyfully receive us. Now, it doesn't matter how much we give, until it's joyfully received, it will not be the church that Jesus wants it to be. So I think having talks like tonight is a great opportunity for the church to open up and to learn a bit about Aboriginal spirituality. And when you do, you can see how deep and meaningful it really is. This was a quote written by Auntie Marion Pearce, who's moved to the Dreaming now. An incredible lady. And he says, for Aboriginal people today, the spirit of the dreaming is still strong within us. It is very important that ritual is forward-looking as well as backward-looking. Each time we use symbols and perform these ancient rituals, we connect our spirit with those of our ancestors, and their spirit is reborn and becomes stronger in us. And I think that's an incredible statement. And particularly for Aboriginal people, I think because of what's happened in Australia and because of colonisation, we were prevented from, it was against the law to speak our languages, to practice our ceremonies. And it's only really the last 15, 20 years that we've actually felt safe enough to be able to share those gifts that we have. You know, before that, it wasn't safe for us. There was a lot, there was a lot of problems that happened. We were sent to penal colonies when we did these kinds of things. And it was our spirituality was really looked on as a pagan religion. It wasn't a religion, and it wasn't understood. But our religion, our spirituality is not a book learned thing. It's within our spirit. It's born in us. And it's something that our ancestors passed to us without even knowing. What a wonderful gift that was and still is. So the symbols that are used by Aboriginal Catholics in church ceremonies throughout Australia are extremely complex and diverse. They vary from one group to another. A symbol in one area is sometimes a contradictory symbol in another area. Nevertheless, cultural adaptation and the use of Aboriginal symbols in church ceremony is done to give strong meaning and intent and greater cultural experience, response and strength in celebrating church life the Aboriginal way. Our Black theology is used today in a catechetical process and in church celebrations, enabling the deepness of the spirituality of Christ in us and enabling our cultural patterns to be preserved. And if you look around the world, you can see, when we bring in our spirituality, we enrich the service. We make it more meaningful. And I hope that people will, after listening to me tonight, will go back to their own parishes and really look at the way that they do things and see how they can enrich their parish life. And so we have very different, every tribal group in Australia have different ochre paintings, and our markings, they represent our tribal groups. So before colonisation, when we would have big corroborees where hundreds of people would come together to celebrate, we would be able to look at each other and just look at our markings, and then that would recognise which group that we were from. And so I'm going to discuss 9 principles of a religion. And so to be recognised as a religion, you must have these 9 principles. Belief, myths and stories, sacred texts, rituals, symbols, social structure, ethical principles or written codes of behaviour, religious experience and spirituality, time and space. So these are ours. And we have enough to be able to actually start our own religion, which is an incredible thing. And so for beliefs, Aboriginal spirituality is deeply linked to the land, spiritually, mentally and physically, in which it owns Aboriginal people. Through this connection, all objects are living and share the same soul and spirit as Aboriginal people share, which is an incredible, I think, a very different belief to Catholicism. So what are the beliefs of Indigenous Australians? Indigenous Australians' oral tradition and spiritual values build on reverence for the land and a belief in the dream time. The dreaming is considered to be both the ancient time of creation and the present day reality of dreaming. There are many different groups. I need to move my, I'm wondering, can I put mine down? There we go. There are many different groups, each with their own individual culture, belief structure and language. And ours is very, very different from what happens in Victoria. You know, even the close-knit groups, we speak related languages, but as we move further away, the languages, the traditions, the culture changes. And so it's very much like, say, in Victoria, we speak, we speak English. In Northern Territory, we speak Japanese. You know, Cape York, we speak Italian. Over in Western Australia, we speak Polish. So it's very, very different. We have different markings for different ceremonies. And we also have different headdresses for different groups. And these are symbols that acknowledge each group and are recognised. So ours is an earth-centred spirituality. Unlike other religions, Aboriginal spirituality is earth-centred and not God-centred. The earth, their country, is impregnated with the power of the ancestor spirits, just like the apostles, which Aboriginal people draw upon. Our land must be nurtured and valued, as this is a key feature of Aboriginal spirituality, passed down as law for thousands and thousands of years, from generation to generation. I don't know how to move up this one, even. Oh. And I can't say this. Our bush medicine. And so nowhere is more apparent than Aboriginal culture, where the land furnishes everything necessary for survival, from our food and shelter to ancient remedies. An insight into the ancient medicinal plant use from the women, the Jabberkai, or the experience of the therapeutic powers of bush medicine at the Daintree Eco Lodge, where my mob are from. So named the Healing Spirit by the Gugu people. And the spa menus feature ochre and mud wraps and Aboriginal massage techniques, native ingredients like the quandong and the Australian wild peach. And so these things were, you know, this is all we had. We had nature's supermarket. You know, we had everything that we needed for healing, to make ourselves well when we were sick, for earaches, for sores, for sore muscles. We had everything. God provided it all for us. And through years, you know, thousands of years of us living as one with nature, we use these ingredients as part of our lives. And each area has different ingredients. Where are we? And so how does Aboriginal spirituality relate to the land? Aboriginal spirituality derives from and establishes a holistic interconnectedness of all the elements of the earth. The land is honoured as sacred, and intimate connections between human beings and nature is celebrated. We respect everything in our culture. You know, you can see that even from the star trees. We didn't kill the trees. We just used the bark. You know, we preserved that tree. We, you know, if an animal was killed for food, it would be killed in a ritualistic way, just like halal meat. And it would be respected, and every part of that animal would be used. We would use the sinew for sewing. We would use the fur for clothing, or the feathers for jewellery. And then after we'd finished with that animal, then we would rebury it back into Mother Earth so that the Creator Spirit would send another one to replace it. And it was very much against our law to kill anything that more than what we needed. And even as far as, like with crabs, you know, you're not allowed to kill the female ones. You can only kill the male ones because the females will produce more. So it's against our law to do that. So we're very, very holistic. So ownership is unknown to us. We don't own the land owns us. The land is my mother. My mother is the land. The land is the starting point to where it all began. We come from the land. It's like picking up a piece of dirt and saying, this is where I start and this is where I'll go. The land is our food, our culture, our spirit, and our identity. And as I said at the start, this will never be my land in Victoria. This will never be my country. When I die, my spirit will go back to Cape York, to my people, to where I belong. And so, our ceremonies are to pay respects to the land, to show our respect for the land, because we knew that for our survival, we had to take care of her. If we disrespected the land, then we would presume, and if things happen badly to our communities, then we would see that as punishment for something that we had done. We always must respect our land. And so the land owns us, which is a very, very different concept to Western culture. We do not own the land, not as you own the land. We belong to the land. She is our mother. We love, respect, protect, and care for our land. She gave us life, and our law is to protect her. It is a spiritual connection that God gifted us. It is what has kept us strong, and it is what continues to strengthen us and shall evermore. Our land is our gift to us. And so, the beliefs. So I'm going to actually look to give you a bit of an idea of Aboriginal spirituality. And so our beliefs in the church way, the central beliefs support the ritual life of tradition, the resurrection, the prayer, the Trinity, and the sacraments. In the Aboriginal way, Aboriginal people for thousands of years have had distinct beliefs in the Creator Spirit, who created all Aboriginal people as well as the world around us. This connection is just as strong today as many years ago. As a people, we were introduced to Jesus through the missionaries, and we immediately felt an affinity to him and his journey of persecution. And for Aboriginal people, our culture is built on spirituality. There's an Oxford dictionary with world religions, and the only one that I speak about is Aboriginal spirituality, because our culture is our spirituality is our culture. And if you say to Aboriginal people, are you religious? 99% of them will say no. But do you believe in the Creator Spirit? Yes. Do you believe in the dream time? Yes. And so that's our spirituality. That's our spirituality. I'm throwing a bird. So ceremony was part of everyday life and was taught from a very young age. And we believed that that if we didn't perform particular ceremonies, then bad things would happen to us, or the bad things would happen to us. And it was also connected to our dignity. So here are 5 ancient rituals that Aboriginal people still use today. A welcome to country. And can I just say, anybody can do an acknowledgement to country. But if you see somebody doing a welcome to country, they have to be a traditional custodian. I couldn't do a welcome to country, not here in Melbourne, because it's not my country and it never will be. A smoking ceremony. This is very much like the incense in the church. It's to cleanse our spirit, it's to cleanse our soul. And what we do is, when we have the smoke, we pull it up through our spirit so that it rises up to the Creator Spirit and thereby cleansing us. An ochre anointment, so the putting on of the different of our different markings that represent our tribal groups. our bush medicine. You know, without that, we wouldn't have survived, because our bush medicines have, you know, cured a lot of things, and they're still used today. We still have many bush medicines that are used today. And our bora rings, which were for ceremony, so very much like a church today. Smoking ceremony, you know, is a very important. And I know as Aboriginal people, if we have hard times, I know if I've been in places where groups have had disagreements, and we will have a smoking ceremony to cleanse everything and to move away, to let go of the anger or the hurt or, you know, what we're feeling. And it's to help us to clear our spirit and souls. And so the ochre anointing for Indigenous people have long believed the spiritual power of ochre, formed from hard clay, which is dried out, ground into powder and mixed with water before being applied to the body. And ochre forms the basis of many sacred ceremonies and has powerful symbolism within Aboriginal culture. And it is because it's our dressing. You know, when you go to church and you put on special clothes, when you get married and you have a special outfit that you wear, when we have baptisms, we have special outfits. Well, our body is our outfit. And so we use the ochre to represent that special sort of anointing of us. And so the myths and stories. And so the church way, the sacred stories that support the profound religious truths and provide messages that emphasise tradition and beliefs. And they give meaning to the essential questions, such as questions of creation or the reason for pain and suffering. For example, the Exodus, the miracles, and the lives of the saints. And for Aboriginal people, we've used the campfire as the central place to tell the stories of Dreamtime, how our world was created and our place in it. We use smoking ceremonies to cleanse our soul, and we had stories for every single aspect of our lives, good and bad. And our stories around the campfire were, you know, how we lived our lives. They were like the stories from the apostles. Then they were also there to keep us safe, to protect us. You know, can you imagine living in a mire and you have small children? You know, you want to keep them safe so that they're not wandering out at night time. So they were told spooky stories, and that was to protect them so that they didn't wander off in the middle of the night and fall into a river or off a cliff or whatever. You know, they were things that helped to keep us safe, and they were a very, very part of our culture. I've lost my mouth now. Oh, there we go. Cave paintings. Now, these cave paintings go back thousands and thousands of years. You know, we've found them here from over 60,000 years ago. And if you have a look at the size of these people in the picture, how did they put those paintings up there? It's incredible. We have many, many cave paintings too that have wanjinas in them. And wanjinas are, I suppose, like angels. And there are cave paintings of wanjinas all over Australia, and they have halos around their heads just like angels, and they don't have mouths because they told us in our hearts and our minds how to live. And these have been documented all around Australia. The sacred texts, they provide meaning and purpose in life of those in tradition. The scriptures, the word of God, it's written under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. And for Aboriginal people, the cave paintings that told the stories of God, which is where our laws come from, the wanjinas. And our song lines also give us creation stories in ways that were easy to remember, just like the gospel have important messages to convey, so do our myths. That's why they're so important to us. You know, incredible pieces, cave paintings from a long time ago, telling our story, you know, and these are our nature's galleries. The centre of Australia, what an incredible cathedral this is. And so our rituals, so the church way, the rituals, repeated actions are central to tradition, to tradition's identity. The church, they have symbols, actions and words that are accompanied by prayers, and they can be linked to sacramental movements in a believer's life. And so, for example, the 7 sacraments. To us by the Creator Spirit. A very special time of ceremony, celebrated in every Aboriginal community and family group to give thanks for our gifts. Same as prayer. There are many rituals, smoking to ward off evil spirits, men's and women's initiation, death rituals, marriage rituals, seasonal rituals. So we had rituals for every part of our lives, and they were very important. They were connected to our dignity, but also connected to our faith and our beliefs. And so initiation, you know, for example, the initiation in the mainstream might include the Christian baptism or confirmation, the Jewish bar mitzvah, the acceptance of the fraternal organisation, secret society or religious orders, or graduation from school or recruit training. Aboriginal initiation ceremonies. The boys usually aged around 12 to 16 years, often taken from their mothers and painted all over with red ochre. They'll have a hair belt woven from strands of human hair is tied around their waist, and they're traditionally taken on a journey to different communities, gathering people to participate in the rituals, or they may undergo those rituals over there. The women dance and often wail as the child will be lost, returning later as a man. And there's many, we have circumcision ceremonies. I know of places where they actually cut the vocal cords on the young men out in the bush, so that their voice is deeper, so that they really do. And when they come back from initiation, they're no longer to be that connected to their mother, because they are no longer a baby, they're an adult now. And they have to take on those responsibilities as an adult. And so these can be at times very painful, and they can go for a long time. And there is a lot of lead up to them. And some of them are that, you know, from the age of 12 or 10, they're not allowed to cut their hair. That can be one, so that, you know, when they're out in the bush, that is part of the ritual to have their hair cut. So they come back, they go away as a boy and they come back as a man. So there's separate ceremonies for men and for women. And the women often mourn because my baby is gone, you know, and they are, there's secret stories with the men and there's secret women's. I don't know how to get this up off the top there. And I can't even read what that says. But anyway, corroboree is a genetic name for the Aboriginal dance ritual, often involving costumes and music. And the term was first used by British colonisers, who mangled the original Indigenous word corroboree, and is now used in the Australian vernacular to refer to a large gathering of people. And these corroborees happened all around Australia. Now, in Victoria, the Kulin Nations would come together, and we would go to Birrarung Ma and the MCG, ironically, and we would have ceremony, and they would be very, very important times. They would be times of where young men particularly would be presented, like a coming out ceremony. You know how we have young girls that have their can't think of the word, when they have the big ball and all that. Well, we would have that too. And at this corroboree time, you know, when they came together, the corroborees could go for a few days. So they were very, very important. They were a time of families catching up together, of meeting. I went to up to my grandmother's country in Laura, and they have a fantastic festival up there every 3 years. I think it's 3 years, at the Laura Festival. And in Cape York, there are 20 tribal groups there who come together, and they have a dance-off. And it is really, it's really important, and there's no mucking around. You have to be so respectful. But one thing that I really took notice of, every group, before they danced, before they performed, they would walk around the outside of the arena, speaking in language, calling the Creator Spirit to be with them and to support them. And it was a great time of pride. People are very, very proud. I remember watching a little boy, and he was about 6, and he stood there and he said to his dad, please, Dad, I've done it right 4 times. Can I please dance tomorrow? And it was incredible to be out in the bush and to hear the clapsticks and the didgeridoo and, you know, all droning through the night with people practicing, and they practiced for hours and hours on end. But they came there with, 12 months behind them of practicing and making sure that they got it all right, because, they can't do things to shame their mob. They have to do it with a lot of pride. Where are we? Okay, a bora ring. In the presence of a bora ring, a circular shape on the ground with raised embankment circling, indicates that you are standing beside an ancient sacred site that was once used as a ceremonial ground for rites of passage and initiation ceremonies. Many have been lost and destroyed over the years. Only around 16 remain on the east coast of Australia. But you can see one of the few remaining in Nudgee, in waterholes in Brisbane. There's also some up at Lake Mungo, which is a bit closer to Victoria, just on the border with New South Wales, which is an incredibly spiritual place. If anybody ever gets the opportunity to go to Lake Mungo, please take it. The spirit is alive and well there, and you can feel them walking around with you. Lake Mungo is where we actually get our carbon dating. Lady Mungo has been dated to 60,000 years, and she was buried in ritual and ceremony. But there are items in her with her burial that prove that. So, 60,000 years ago, we weren't blindly walking around on walkabout, just wandering places. We all had to stay on our own country, but we had ceremony and ritual back 60,000 years ago. Something incredible that's in your backyard. And so this is a drawing from Sunbury in Victoria, and these circles are still there, and these are ceremonial circles. There's no trees growing in there. There's a grass area, a dirt area where people danced. And so different mobs had different corroborees and ceremonies. The Australian continent is enormous, almost 8 million square kilometres, in fact, and it is home to hundreds of distinct clan groups and nations. And each of these groups had their own style of corroboree. In the Pilbara, it's called Yanda, or Yolanda, Yalara. Whereas in the Kimberley, corroborees are called Chumba. In Victoria, we celebrate Tandarum, same as corroboree. So it means the same thing. And this happened all over Australia. There wasn't one part of Australia that we didn't inhabit. We lived in the deserts, we lived on the coast, we lived in the mountains, we lived in the bush. We inhabited every part of this country. And in every one of those countries, we had ceremony. So rituality is learned through initiation, the development of spirituality, and furthermore, a connection to the land. Initiation occurs during the celebration of dreaming events that admit a girl or a boy to a sacred and secret life, a celebration of adulthood. And so not anybody was just initiated. You had to show the qualities of a mature person. You could not be childlike. You had to be mature. You had to show respect. You had to prove that you knew the laws and that you understood the laws. Oh, I better start moving. The little fellas learning how to dance from a young age. And, you know, they're dancing up, they're shaking their legs, and they're doing it with pride. I love this one, because this one is really, we're talking to the earth here. We're bringing that, it's about bringing up the dust and the dirt. It's about calling our ancestors to be with us. It's about calling Mother Earth to be with us. And the more dust and dirt that we blow up, the better the ceremony and the stronger it is for the people. And so symbols, church symbols, definite objects, images that bring life to the infinite ideas that give meaning, like the Eucharist, the Holy Cross, the crib, the ashes. For each of the Aboriginal, each tribe have their own symbols, rituals and markings that recognised and are accepted as being sacred and only used for specific ceremonial times. We use symbols to communicate with each other, as our languages are very diverse, but our symbols are universal. And we use message sticks today, painted full of symbols to convey our story. And our message sticks in Victoria, congratulations, everybody. You know, we have over 600 in parishes and schools around the state. And this is our contribution to the Catholic Church. You know, this is something tangible that we can give to a community to invite us in. It's a symbol that we recognise. When we see that symbol and signs in churches, then we know we're welcome in that space. This is a picture of the Aboriginal Catholic Ministry. This is our smoking circle. And we have, before we have weddings, particularly baptisms or funerals, any significant time, we will have a smoking ceremony where, you know, we will acknowledge the traditional custodians. We'll have a welcome to country. I know we had when my grandson was baptised, we did the smoking, and we also had the bull roar, that's calling our ancestors to come and be with us at this sacred moment. So we're really using our bringing our culture into our Catholic faith. This is a photograph of the Aboriginal Catholic Ministry. This was quite a few years ago, because since then now all those walls are full. We have many signs and symbols, because that's what welcome us into a church. When we see signs and symbols that recognise and celebrate our culture, we know that we're welcome in that space. These are our windows at the Aboriginal Catholic Ministry. The man has a message stick. Bunjil represents the creator spirit for Wurundjeri people. We have Jesus, who's black and he's on the cross. He was not white with blonde hair and blue eyes. Look at where he lived. And he's on the gum tree, which is a manna gum tree. And on Wurundjeri land, when you're welcomed onto Wurundjeri land, you'll be smoked, and then they will give you a manna gum leaf so that you're welcome to their resources, from the tops of the trees to the roots of Mother Earth. We have the rainbow serpent. And there's handprints. You can faintly see handprints. That's our ancestors watching over, making sure that we do things respectfully. Our signs and symbols, our message stick there with this Aboriginal cloth. We have the bowls to recognise the Torres Strait, the shells, and, you know, and the gum leaves. They're welcoming signs for Aboriginal people. Our signs, symbols and rituals are welcoming. We have handmade gumnut rosary beads. You know, we're moving into modern day. And so for us, we want to share our creations, and these are things that can welcome non-Aboriginal people in. You know, here we have gumnut rosary beads that are liturgically correct, and And so these are just some of the small things that we offer. These are some of the crosses that the Aboriginal Catholic Ministry that we like to share with communities. And we have lots of schools that have taken up these. We have beautiful two-way cross. An expression, this is one that Clark made, and about her Aboriginal spirituality and Catholic identity. And the two-way cross comes with an explanation of the artwork and the cultural journey that complements any RE units of study on Aboriginal spirituality, drawing on the parallels of the 7 sacraments. And the two-way cross comes in 2 sizes. And there's no 2 that are the same because they're all painted at different times, and there's different feelings, and there's different emotions that come in for each one. The Coolaman, we can use the Coolaman for water blessings. We have beautiful ones at the ACM that have got the ends closed on them so that we can put water in there, and we can use that for the water blessing in the church. At Advent, we've created a ceremony where we have the Coolaman turned the wrong side up. And so we will process it into the church, and it'll be placed upside down in front of the altar. And then Christmas Eve, there's a ceremony to turn it over, waiting for the baby Jesus to arrive. And they can be used in the offertory procession. Here's another gift that we've created that's available to everybody. And this is praying the rosary the Aboriginal way. And it gives an Aboriginal version of praying the rosary. I just sent one over to Pope John Paul, not Pope John Paul, apologies, to Pope Francis. I did some recording and some talking for the Oceania about Aboriginal people and spirituality, and I sent some over for the Pope. And so there's quotes from the New Testament, and they've got an italic for the person who's saying the rosary, so that people have a deeper appreciation of the New Testament, and especially the role of Mary. For Aboriginal people associated closely with Mary as the nurturing comforter, like the land we call our mother. And so totems is another very, very important thing. Totems, we all have totems, like they are like our guardian angels, and totems, I might say that our totems connect people through our physical and kinship relatedness. Totems are still important today in Aboriginal culture and are still used as a way of continuing and maintaining connections with the land, the dream time, and our ancestors. Traditionally, at the time of birth or just before birth, a child is given a totem. Your families have totems, and these will belong to you. And this is our connectedness to our ancestors and our descendants, as we have, as well as family and community mob today. You never eat your totem, and you protect your totem, and you never marry your totem, because we also used it in our moiety, because we didn't have written forms. So you can never marry your totem because they could be a relation of yours. So they were very, very important in many aspects of life. Oh, here we go. Totems represent a person as they existed in the dreaming in the form of animals, plants, or natural phenomenon. And they are thus links between an individual and community, particularly ancestor spirits in the land. One of my totems is the orange-shouldered parrot. Aboriginal spirituality. And so this is my Coolaman. It's a beautiful one that my brother painted for me, and it has our ancestors on it. It has our totems on it. And the totem is a natural object or plant or animal that's inherited by the family group. We used ours. We've put it in our Coolaman. And so when we baptised my grandchildren, we had the baby, and we placed our baby in this Coolaman. So they were wrapped in their ancestors. And then we had the grandparents process the baby, the grandfathers actually process the baby out and give them to their children. And so this is a beautiful symbol that will continue on, I hope, for generations and generations in our family. There's the pictures of it. It's an incredible piece of art. It's very heavy, but it's big enough to hold a baby, and it holds pride of place in our home. It does. I've had 3 grandsons so far baptised in this Coolaman. My grandmother actually, my auntie, who in my culture is my grandmother, and she got one of my cousins to get a tree from my grandfather's country. And so the tree comes from my country. So it's that real connection then back to land, back to the people. The social structure. I'll just read the Aboriginal one. Aboriginal people have particular rules and traditions that must be followed, i.e. marrying the right skin group because we can't be interbred, law people, healers, and everybody had roles that were taught from birth, and their place was to learn all that could be known to do that role properly. Just like, a child, you would look at a child and you would see that this child may be a healer. They may be a storyteller like myself. And so those gifts would be nurtured from a young age, and they would have the person in their community that specialised in that area would nurture that child and would help to develop that gift that they have. And so how do Aboriginals respect their elders? Aboriginal communities are hierarchical structures. Most communities, men and women are elders with equal standing. In others, there may be a few men who hold the status. Elders are usually addressed as auntie or uncle as a sign of respect, which in this context, are terms of respect. An elder is an identified and respected male or female person of any age within the community who has the trust, knowledge and understanding of their culture and the permission to speak about it. Some elders are referred to as uncle and auntie, but should only refer to these titles when given permission to do so. Simply asking is the best way to find out if you can do so or not. And this is exactly, the grandmother showing about bush tucker, teaching from a young age what things that need to be done. We had lots of foods that needed special treatment to be able to be safe. Ethical principles or written codes. The Catholic way, the ethical principles or written codes of behaviour, rules and regulations, the dogma, the doctrine, that give guidance to people's lives within the religious tradition. Example, love one another as I have loved you. And our law was to sustain all that had been created, never harm anyone or anything, including the hunting of food. Only what was needed would be taken. I've said this, they would be reburied, and our laws were very strict and everyone must comply. If not, they would be regarded as they would not be regarded as trustworthy or authorities in their area, and they would not gain the respect that's required in Aboriginal community, which is that it holds a lot of weight, to be respected. Religious experience and spirituality. And so the church way, spiritual events, moments in believers' lives that help us to understand the close beliefs with tradition, provide characteristic ways of behaving in the light of belief, to love one another and to see the face of God. So if people broke the law, there'd be punishment, and belief that all tribes would be taught from an early age that the rules would be upheld strongly. Otherwise, there would be consequences for the whole tribe. It was imperative that for the dignity and pride of each tribe that their members obeyed the law. And so that was very, very strong. These are Pukamani. It was made ceremony. It's for their dead son here. We have the Tiwi people. They make the Pukamani ceremony, and they're all dressed and painted up for their deceased person. And they'd always sing they'd also sing and dance for them. And so these are very important. They're ceremonial burial poles. I was looking at a few different ways, following instructions of the Creator Spirit, and the Tiwi people in the Bathurst and Melville Islands honoured the dead through the Pukamani ceremonies carried out around carved and painted grave posts. And so these are some of them, different ones. There'd be a lot of time would be put into them because it was like represented a headstone. You know, how much work do we put into a headstone? They're carved, they're painted, they're adorned, and they're made to look beautiful. Here's some more examples. The Pukamani ceremony take place between 6 and 12 months after burial and can last for days. Dancers circle around and through the formation of the Chitani, and to mark the end of the ceremonies. The painted bark baskets are placed on top of the posts, and the burial Pukamani poles are gifted to please the spirits of the dead. And they're placed around the graves and left to decay. And here's some examples of some that have been in exhibitions in Melbourne. So the belief in the dreaming is kept strong, you know, where our people are in the dreaming. This is I can't even think of the word. Anyway, you can see what it is, and we've got the human world, the physical world, and the sacred world, and they're all connected, and they're all connected with outside. You know, the human world, the ceremonies, the rules of behaviour, the family relationships, the people. You know, the physical world, the land, the animals, the sky, the sacred world. It's all connected. The stories, increased care of country, the existence out of time, the healing and seeing of the future. These were all very, very important times to us. So ceremony is central to Aboriginal life, and it's still very important. Physical world, the Aboriginal people in our life, our lives are governed by the physical, the sacred, and the human worlds equally. All these worlds were imperative to keep our social structure and our laws for a harmonious society. So this is how we made sure that everybody respected each other. We lived as one with each other and the land. We regarded the land as our mother. If we take care of her, she'll take care of us. These are some of the stations of the cross that we have at the Aboriginal Catholic Ministry, and another expression of connecting our Aboriginal spirituality with our cultural. He has the Pakani, the poles. He has the possum skin cloak. And so examples of Aboriginal people in the Northern Territory demonstrating punishment laws through performing a ritual. You know, they're showing what's going to happen to you if you do something wrong. Physical world, we've just done all that. The physical world, the land, the sky, and the animals. The human world, I need to hurry now. The human world, ceremonies, men and women in general, rules of behaviour, family relationships, who can marry who, and where you can go, and what ceremonies you can perform. People who you can have relationships with, capacity to adapt and change as needed. We've done that fantastically. Look at us today. Our secrecy is very, very important. Our sorry business is extremely important. Our teaching and our dancing, it all helps to strengthen our culture. Our sacred world, our laws, our stories, existence out of time, increased care of country, increased care for each other as well as the environment. Our punishment, our healing, our belief in the spiritual world, sacred ceremonies of birth, death, marriage, illness, all aspects of our lives. Our sacred sites, very, very important. We've talked about that. You know, here's a great example of dressing for ceremony. You know, very intricate. Everything has a meaning. Our time and space. We have a right time for everything. We are not lazy people, but we recognise that there is a right time and a wrong time for everything. If it is the wrong time, it will not go according to plan. There is a time for ceremony. If it's done at the right time, at the wrong time, or in the wrong space, it will not be effective. The space is made sacred by smoking and the warding off of evil spirits. Aboriginal people today, the spirit of the dreaming is still strong with us, within us. It is very important that ritual is forward-looking as well as backward-looking. Each time we use a symbol and perform these ancient rituals, we connect our spirit with those of our ancestors, and their spirit is reborn and becomes strong in us. And I just thought it was worthwhile reiterating that because it is so important. We won't go on to this. I think our time is just about up. So, this is a vestment that we've had made for Father Charles Balnaves when he was ordained as a priest. Beautiful Aboriginal symbols, and he has the pelican who when it's starving, to save its babies, it will peck itself and feed its baby the blood of itself, just like now. Oh, this is beautiful too. These are different vestments that Charles owns, that he's had. And these are some of the symbols that he has used on his. So he's mixed the Catholic faith and the Aboriginal faith together. He's got the circle with people, the campfire with people sitting around it. He has the sacred Eucharist and the cross with the gum leaves. I'll just go quickly through these. And these all have, there is all meaning behind each one of them. And this is young man Kevin Ellis, who painted some stoles for us. I probably haven't got time to go into these, but these are, we did a matrix of what the Aboriginal symbol is, what the church symbol is, and what the mainstream symbol is and how they can be used within the church. And so headbands, the coolerman, the sacred oils, the message stick, the dilly bag, water, the didgeridoo, the smoking ceremony, the gum leaves, the eagle, the wheat or seeds, Aboriginal cross, the boomerangs, the Maya message sticks. And so there is a message stick at St. Pat's Cathedral, and beautiful stone inlay in the cathedral forecourt are a magnificent and poignant addition to the Catholic heritage of Melbourne. This is from Archbishop Hart. For too long, the Indigenous people of this country have been left on the margins of our society, and sadly, this has often been true of the church as well. The intention of my predecessor, Archbishop Pell, in encouraging the installation of the message stick and the stone inlay was to acknowledge the wrongs of the past and to highlight the special place that Aboriginal people occupy in the church. This is warmly affirmed as my personal view also. I welcome you to this great cathedral and encourage you to visit, encourage you in visiting and to remember all of those who have helped to build and maintain the church in Melbourne, especially the Aboriginal people. That's a picture of the message stick. That's a picture of the forecourt. I think we'd better stop. Here we go. I'll close with a prayer. Creator Spirit, all creation once declared your glory. Your laws were honoured and trusted. Forgive us our neglect as our country approaches a most critical moment in history. Listen to our prayers as we turn to you. Hear the cry of the land and its people, just as you heard the cry of Jesus, your son, on the cross. Okay. And so I think we've got so much to share. An hour isn't long. I'll stop.
Thank you so much, Sherry. We'll now get Father Andrew and Berna Wake to address the questions to you that people have put in the chat line. And thank you very much, everyone, for putting them in the chat line.
Thanks, Sherry. It's been terrific, and I know there'll be a thank you towards the end of our meet. But just a couple of questions have come through in the chat room, and one was whether we could get access to your slideshow, whether you're able to make that available to us. If so, that'll be great. Just any thoughts on how parish communities might be able to assist First Nations people anywhere in Australia?
Well, first of all, make sure that you make the church open to us. Have signs and symbols. Have things that invite us into the church. Invite us into the church. You know, we've got NAIDOC coming up the first Sunday in July. Every parish in Australia gets, they get the NATSIC liturgy for Aboriginal Sunday, and that comes along with everything. It explains how to do it. It even gives the homily for the parish priest. So, this is in our liturgical calendar. It would be fantastic to see every priest, every church in Australia celebrating it. I often hear, oh, but we don't have Aboriginal people in our church. Well, we celebrate St. Joseph Day, we celebrate St. Mary Day, we celebrate St. Sissy. They're not sitting in the pews. So we need to be welcomed in, and if we don't feel that our contribution is being joyfully received, then we won't go. So I think it's about persistence. We for so long have been oppressed that it's, that we don't feel welcome. So, put those posters up, welcome people. And even if they don't come the first time or even the second time or the third time, keep doing it. Keep opening those doors to us.
Great, thanks, Sherry. Another question who we've got here is, can you give us any more advice or direction on how those of us who are not Indigenous can best incorporate Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander spirituality in our faith communities?
Yes, we have a national body. We have the message stick for a start. That's one thing that the Victorian Catholic community has taken on with gusto. There is a message stick in almost every cathedral in Australia. We have close to 600 of them around the state. And there's even a message stick in the Vatican, because the Vatican recognises the deep spirituality connected to it. And when you have the message stick, there's a ceremony, an installation ceremony that goes along with that, where the congregation stands up and pledge to do the right thing, to be respectful. And it also comes along with a whole heap of prayers and resources to help communities. We also have NATSIC, National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Catholic Council, which have an abundance of prayers on their website. The Aboriginal Catholic Ministry have many, many prayers on their site, on our site too. Aboriginal Catholic Ministry Victoria, you can Google that. There's lots of prayers that are available to communities. So it's a matter of looking. Have a look for them. Google's a fantastic tool.
It certainly is. Thanks, Sherry. Another question came up. Is Aboriginal spirituality always or mostly handed down, or does it evolve or become newly created over time?
I think both. Both. It's forward-looking and backward-looking. And for many, many years, we haven't been allowed to practice our ceremonies because it was against the law. We weren't allowed to do those kinds of things. So for many, many years, we've been oppressed with that. But we've got a big resurgence now where we're bringing it back, and we're starting to do that. In Melbourne, we have the Tandarum festival that happens, and that's for everybody, and that's inviting everybody in. We have NAIDOC week, the first week in July, starting from the first Sunday in July. That's a whole week of celebrations. That's an opportunity to welcome everybody to come along and be involved. Show that you want to learn.
Okay, thanks very much, Sherry. Probably a very topical one. You're probably expecting one of these. The new government indicates that it will promote the full Uluru Statement and give First Nations people a greater say in their own development and in the nation. Do you have any thoughts on the greatest things that need to be addressed in the next 3 years?
Yep, we need a seat at the table. Do nothing for us without us. For too long, people have been making decisions about our people and about our lives without our contribution. We need to be sitting around the table, and we need to be involved in discussions that are taking place around us and around our growth, around the things that aren't good that are happening in our community. We need to be involved in that decision making. Like in Northern Territory, they've still got the basics card. If I lived in the Northern Territory and I was on a pension, they would ration my money I met a man that was a professor, an Aboriginal professor, and he said to me, I can't go to the milk bar and buy my grandson an ice cream or a lollipop because it's not on the basics card. How would you feel if the government took total control of your money, no matter who you were? And it only happens to Aboriginal people. No, it only happens to Aboriginal people in the Northern Territory. It's back to ration days and it's disgraceful. There is our whole self-determination. We have a National Assembly every 3 years and we have people from the Northern Territory that can't come because they can't save. All their money is put onto a basics card and they have a very, very small amount of cash that they're allowed to have and they have to go to a particular shop to buy stuff. And as you can imagine, they can charge whatever they want because they've got the monopoly on it. We need self-determination. Give us the chance to determine our own lives. We haven't had that opportunity yet.
Thanks, Sherry.
That's the start of it.
Okay. We've got a number of educators in the Zoom tonight, and I'm just wondering, message sticks generally have been in churches. What about if they're in Catholic schools? Is that?
We've got hundreds in Catholic schools.
Right.
Hundreds. And what we've done is we've turned the message stick. In traditional times, message sticks were used if we were having a corroboree, MCG, a young fellow would be sent across country with a message stick with signs and symbols on there, inviting the nation to come to the gathering. And he would light fires along the way. He'd be met at boundaries. He'd be smoked. He'd show the message stick. He'd be given rite of passage. What we've done is in 2006, we said everybody's forgotten what the Pope said. And so the Australian Catholic bishops sent out message sticks to each state and territory to call people back. And we had communities saying, we want one, how can we do it? And so we've turned it into a liturgical item. And so ours are round and they have the Catholic symbols as well as the Aboriginal symbols on it. And when the gospel is processed in, the message stick will be held up and it leads them. And then while the word of God is being spoken, the message stick is held up beside the gospel while it's being read. And so that gives a community an opportunity to bring in Aboriginal prayers, to think about Aboriginal people and to welcome us into their church. So we have them available from the Aboriginal Catholic Ministry, and they come along with a plaque that quotes Pope John Paul until our contributions joyfully received, as well as many, many resources to help communities to understand and really make it a living, moving, not an artifact. It's not a piece of art. It's to be accepted and to be revered in the community.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Sherry, you spoke a bit about how important it was that communities obey the law and when they break the rules, that they bring shame to the community. One question: what is the process for forgiveness? How does that take place when somebody has brought shame to their community?
Well, they have to be sorry. Yeah. If they aren't, then they would be ostracised. And particularly in traditional times, if you're ostracised from your community, you don't survive very long because you need community to survive. And I think the forgiveness, you have to show that you're remorseful for it. And if you don't show remorse and you don't prove that you're sorry for what you did, then you aren't accepted. And I think, look, the same goes for everybody. If somebody does something really bad, they are, people push them away and they don't want to have anything to do with them. It's the same concept.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks, Sherry.
Can I just say too, if somebody did something wrong, maybe going with somebody that they shouldn't be with, stealing something, they would be speared in the leg, but then it would be up to the one that speared them to help them to heal too. And I think that's part of Aboriginal people, we're asking to, all this stuff, particularly what we're talking about the Uluru Statement and the truth telling. We know it's going to be hard, but we need to face up to it. And we're there to help everybody to get through that pain, to get over it. We're over it. We're not blaming people that are around today. And so we want to help you to understand us And that's part of the healing process that needs to happen in this country.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sherry. Great words and great reminder to all of us in raising our awareness. I think we've got exhausted, but yep, go on.
We're going to a referendum next year. Please, everybody, I ask you, please, please, please. We had the church with us in 1967. We're asking you to be with us now. Please talk to your family, talk to your friends. Please vote yes, that we have a voice in Parliament. Absolutely. You know, we can't do it without the communities. And so I ask you all to, even if you speak to one person, and tell them, you know, pass the word on. John, sorry.
No, thanks, Sherry. No, it's a good reminder too. And you've raised incredible awareness for us in the whole area of Aboriginal spirituality. I think we've exhausted most of the questions in the chat room. But yeah, I'm just conscious of time and very aware of how you've been very generous with your time and sharing it with all of us. So I'll just hand you back to Julie Buick, who will just say some words of thanks. Thanks, Julie.
Right. Thanks, Father Andrew. And also Berna for pulling all those questions together. And thank you everyone who asked the questions. It was a great question time. In closing this evening, Sherry, it's just been a wonderful sharing of your very special message to all of us. And hopefully we all go away with, you know, our contribution in helping your contribution to joyfully be received in our communities, our parish communities. It's such an important message for us all to take away, and I think the main message as well. It was very thought-provoking, and look, we will all go away with a much better understanding of Aboriginal spirituality now, and it's very generous of you to offer those slides to everyone. And the past experiences and today's challenges for our First Nations peoples, and your message for us all to vote on the referendum, I think is very pertinent at this point in time. So our challenge really is to share this with all our friends and families and communities in Jesus' most important message, to love one another as he loves us. So thank you all, everybody, for attending. But first, just before, we do have a gift for Sherry that we will be bringing to you in the next week. Is that right, Berna? Can you?
Yes. Thursday week, we'll drop in with a little something. In fact, the lady that created this, Sherry, is on the line tonight. And it's if you can see that, it's a beautiful sea cross, seeing as we are from Mordialloc and Aspendale by the beach. So it's a beautiful sea cross, and it'll be our pleasure to drop that into you in the next week or so. So thank you.
Okay, make sure you call me first.
Call you first.
I'm very busy.
Yeah, I know you are, but thank you.
So thank you
everyone.
Everybody for attending tonight. We really appreciate your presence, and hopefully you've got a lot out of it, and we'll take that away with you in your hearts. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And thanks, Caritas, for helping us online. Really appreciate it. Romina and Nicole. Thank you. Good night, all.